Welcome to my podcast, A Bold Leader. I'm TD Smyers, and I'm glad you're back. Hey, welcome to 2022 and Season 2 of A Bold Leader, the podcast. It accompanies my blog, A Bold Leader, which you can also read or just listen to it right here. The Episode 1 for Season 2 is called Beyond the Rules, and it kind of picks up where we left off last time. Learn the rules like a pro so you can break them like an artist, often attributed to Pablo Picasso. Barbara and I enjoy cooking together, most of the time. Sometimes, frequently. She chides me for being such a rule follower because I stick pretty close to the recipe, measuring meticulously and carefully timing everything while she floats freely in and out of the pantry, adding some of this instead, estimating amounts based on apparently nothing, and joyfully exploring the culinary art of the possible. I'm simply not experienced enough in food preparation to be comfortable freelancing much just yet. The recipe is my crutch and my safe zone. In the kitchen, I'm bound by the rules. Barbara, on the other hand, has vast experience with recipes. She knows how and why they're written, then she gloriously defies them to produce something other than intended. In fact, sometimes she produces things beyond what the recipe creator might have ever imagined. There's an old adage that rules are made to be broken. And I believe there's a lot of truth to that for a lot of reasons. But first, let's get something straight. In defense of the rules. Subscribing to the philosophy that rules are made to be broken doesn't mean I have a complete disregard for rules. I don't. Every leader needs to be mindful of the governance, compliance, and regulatory realities behind the rules. These guidelines provide structure, boundaries that keep people safe, level the playing field, maintain ethical standards, and protect interests. Roads have painted lines designed to keep cars from running into each other. Work sites have danger areas taped off in yellow, and companies have hiring practices that ensure equal opportunity. After all, rules are generally forged from the blood, sweat, and tears of those who pioneered making stuff happen before we got here. In fact, in Navy aviation, we flew by a set of rules called Naval Air Training and Operating Procedures Standardization, or NATOPS. NATOPS was an ever-expanding set of rules for flyers, covered in blue and held together between two heavy sheets of cloudy plastic by long metal bolts. From the minute I started flight training, it was drilled into my head that NATOPS is written in blood, since every entry in the big blue book was there because someone had messed up something at some point in Navy history. In fact, the advent of NATOPS is one of the key safety innovations alongside such advancements as angled flight decks, on the Navy's path to killing fewer sailors while doing the inherently dangerous work of flying off ships. Clearly, rules, policies, procedures, doctrines, guidelines, codes, etc. are important to the recurring function of most organizations, in defiance of the rules. Oh, but they can be frustrating, can't they, those pesky rules? You want to hire that perfect job candidate, but HR says they don't meet the requirements? Like, whose requirements are they anyway? The HOA stops by while you're putting up your flagpole to tell you it's not in compliance. You want to promote that hard-charging new teammate, but other teammates have been there longer and it's policy to promote them first. In addition to our subjective frustration at times, a close objective look reveals tangible cracks, flaws, and limitations. Rules, policies, standard procedures, they all have some real issues. Rules predetermine a static course of action in a dynamic world. No policy or rule can be written to apply to every possible situation, yet policy institutionally defends the status quo. At the speed science and technology change our lives and livelihoods, it's hard to imagine any policy lasting long. In fact, anachronistic rules are some of the most damaging to progress and success. Rules tend toward obsolescence. They can quickly be OBE or overcome by events, out of touch with the latest industry standards, irrelevant, or even flat out dangerous if they're not updated. Rules are situational. They often don't take into account variations in the environment or changes in circumstances that might render them inappropriate or anachronistic. Rules favor known outcomes over potential returns. Policies and standardized procedures can help enable targeted outcomes, but routes to other more beneficial solutions may never even be considered when rigidly following policy. Rules can be myopic. A rule strictly observed in one part of the organization may cause second or third order effects in other parts detrimental to the organization's overall success. And finally, rules perpetuate flaws. This is perhaps the biggest problem with rules, especially now when science, technology, and information change our concepts of freedom, fairness, success, and prosperity at a blinding rate. When flawed rules are multiplied over and over again as they are followed daily across an enterprise, the effects can be hyperbolic. And hey, it's not just me. First Break All the Rules, Gallup's book documenting the exhaustive research behind their Q12 engagement survey and one of the world's most referenced management sources, begins with this statement. The greatest managers in the world do not have much in common, but despite their differences, these great managers do share one thing. Before they do anything else, they first break all the rules of conventional wisdom. This is how their introduction begins to that book. How many of the rules we swear by today will we look back on nostalgically or perhaps regretfully within just a few years? Smoking sections on airplanes, male-only service academies, antiquated interview protocols. I have a million of them. Sometimes rules really do need to be broken. The spirit and the letter. It's also important and instructive to recognize the split personality of rules, the spirit and intent, and the letter. The former is based on why the rule was created in the first place, taking into account factors like context, chronology, and convention. The latter, on the other hand, is a rigid interpretation of the rule as understood today. In my opening example, I followed the letter of the recipe, while Barbara understood the spirit and intent of it and deviated from the letter to produce a more desirable variation based on the ingredients she had on hand. In fact, had she not been knowledgeable and agile enough to be bold in this way, we'd have gone hungry since we didn't have the ingredients in the kitchen to cook to the letter. NATOPS represented an extremely structured and in practice very rigid letter approach with defined language describing degrees of compliance with the words shall, will, and should. When debriefing a flight, there was never much tolerance for deviating from the letter to operate under the spirit and intent. Operating under the letter is safe, but exploration under the spirit and intent is where all discovery originates. A bold leader's goal should be to lead like my wife Barbara cooks, understanding the recipe well enough to know when and how to depart from it. The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man. George Bernard Shaw in Man and Superman. While managers can be stuck with the processes and policies they're authorized to work under, effective leaders of a special kind, the bold ones, can protect their organizations from the negative effects of too heavy a reliance on policy and blind obedience to rules. I've challenged many rules in my professional life, and when I did, one of two things happened. One, I got schooled on exactly why the rule was a rule, broadening my professional horizon after perhaps a little professional embarrassment. Or two, I exposed flawed policy, an outdated concept, an incomplete approach, or a previously undetected or tolerated crack in the system that had never produced optimum results. So either I got smarter or we all got smarter together. Of course, leading boldly is about much more than just breaking or bending the rules, but bold leaders will at some point face the need to act decisively when rules can no longer be relied upon to guide them to victory, or when situations arise for which a rule has yet to be written. In my next post, we'll take a look at an example or two. I hope you'll come back to join us when we pull up that next post. In the meantime, have a great kickoff to your 2022. We'll see you.